Picture this, right? You are on vacation in Thailand.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it is your first day. You just grabbed a few essentials off, like a local quick commerce app, and your total comes to a very modest 14 baht.
Okay.
So you pull out a crisp 20 baht note, you hand it to the delivery executive, and he just stares at you.
Let me guess. He doesn't have change.
Exactly. No change. He doesn't speak English. You definitely do not speak Thai. And you are standing there trying to communicate through this chaotic game of charades.
Yeah, that is always stressful.
It is. And finally, he pulls out his phone, taps the screen a few times, and holds up a QR code for you to scan.
Right, because the QR code is practically a universal language at this point.
You would think so.
Huh.
But standing there on the street, you realize you can't just scan it with the apps you already have. Because you are a tourist, you have to download a specific local app.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you have to figure out the interface, link a prepaid tourist card to it, wait for the verification, and then finally scan the code.
That is a lot of friction just for a small purchase.
Right? Even the locals in Thailand have to use an app that links directly to a debit or prepaid card. And standing there, fumbling with downloads and card numbers, you realize how unbelievably spoiled we are by UPI in India.
Oh, completely spoiled. I mean, the contrast is huge.
It really is. You don't even need a debit card here. You just download an app, link your bank directly, and you pay. You do not even think twice before paying a local tea vendor, like 5 rupees, because it is instant and completely free.
Yeah, it feels like magic to the user.
But here's the uncomfortable truth behind that magic. The system is bleeding money.
A lot of money.
So today we are doing a deep dive into a recent FinShots article titled, How Do You Scale UPI If It's Not Free? And our mission here is to figure out who is secretly picking up the tab for our convenience and what happens when the money keeping the lights on finally runs out.
What's fascinating here is that this frictionless nothingness, right? Like the absolute absence of barriers, fees, or second thoughts for the consumer. That's always been UPI's biggest feature.
Yeah.
But as we look under the hood of the financial reporting, that exact same feature is now the greatest existential threat to the entire network.
Wow, an existential threat.
Yeah, because whenever you're using a digital service that feels completely free, someone, somewhere is paying for the infrastructure. I mean, for a long time, the sheer scale and convenience of UPI kind of masked the massive cost of that underlying tab.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because we definitely have a tendency to view digital transactions as magic. You scan a code and money just teleports from your bank to the merchant's bank.
Right, teleportation without a cost.
Exactly. But let's look at the mechanics of what is actually happening in the background. Think of UPI like a digital highway. It feels totally free to drive on, but there are toll booths and maintenance crews that we just cannot see.
That's a good way to put it.
Or imagine UPI as an impossibly fast postal service operating between 2 massive, incredibly complex libraries, those being the banks. Every time you buy a coffee, a postman, which is the National Payments Corporation of India, or NPCI, has to deliver a payment request from the merchant's library to your library.
Right.
Both libraries have to instantly locate your specific physical ledger, verify you have the funds, update the balance without a single error, and then send a confirmation back.
And doing that once or twice, that's easy, but doing it millions of times a minute changes the technological requirements completely.
Right. The scale is the issue.
Exactly. Traditional core banking systems, they were never built for this kind of traffic. I mean, historically, banks updated their ledgers in end-of-day batches.
So they weren't doing it in real time.
No, not at all. But with UPI, they are forced to process these microtransactions instantly. We're talking about latency windows measured in milliseconds.
That is insane.
It is. And to prevent the system from just crashing under that load, banks have to run what is called an active server architecture.
Active. What does that mean exactly?
So that means they aren't just running one massive data center. They are running multiple redundant server farms simultaneously, 204/7.
Just in case one goes down.
Exactly. Just to ensure that if one fails, your 50 rupee payment to the tea vendor still goes through instantly. And maintaining that level of active hardware plus constant fraud checking, it costs billions of rupees.
Right. And in the traditional Visa or MasterCard ecosystem, that massive back-end cost is covered by MDR, right?
Yeah, MDR, or the merchant discount rate. That is essentially the oxygen that keeps traditional payment systems breathing.
Okay.
It isn't just a single arbitrary fee either. When a merchant swipes a credit card, the MDR they pay is split several ways.
Like who gets what?
Well, my portion goes to the acquiring bank, which is the merchant's bank that actually provided the point of sale machine.
Got it.
Then another portion, which is called the interchange fee, goes to the issuing bank. That's the bank that gave you your credit card. And a smaller slice goes to the network itself, like Visa or MasterCard, just for acting as the secure bridge.
So everyone gets a little piece of the pie.
Exactly. That split incentivizes everyone to keep their servers running and, their security tight.
But the FinShot's article points out that in 2020, the Indian government completely banned banks from charging MDR on UPI transactions.
Yep. A total ban.
And this is where the logic seems a bit tangled to me, honestly, because the ban on fees was tied to an amendment in the Income Tax Act, where the government made it mandatory for any business earning over 50 crore rupees to offer digital payment options.
Right, the legal mandate.
Yeah. So if the government is already legally mandating adoption, why do they need to ban the fees? Wouldn't the legal mandate alone force the merchants to comply?
Well, a legal mandate looks great on paper, but behavioral economics dictates what actually happens on the ground.
Okay, fair.
If you force a business to adopt a new digital payment system, and that system costs them a percentage of their revenue every single time a customer uses it, they are going to react defensively.
Because their margins are already tight.
Exactly. Merchants operate on razor-thin margins sometimes. They would inevitably pass that new cost directly onto you, the consumer, by just raising prices.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
Right. Or they would introduce friction, like imposing a minimum purchase limit of 500 rupees for UPI transaction.
Right. You see that with cards sometimes. No cards under $10.
Exactly. In a worst-case scenario, the massive unorganized retail sector would just find loopholes to quietly refuse compliance and push people back toward cash, which completely defeats the whole purpose of a digital India.
Ah, so they had to make it irresistible.
Precisely. To ensure absolute frictionless compliance, the government basically sucked the oxygen out of the room. They legally prevented the banks from charging the merchants, creating a zero MDR environment.
Which creates a massive vacuum, because those servers you mentioned, they are still humming. The redundant data centers are still drawing power. The engineers are still getting paid.
Oh, yeah. The bills still have to be paid.
Right. So if the merchants aren't paying the MDR, and we, the users, aren't paying a convenience fee, who is actually covering the billions in operating costs?
Well, the government stepped in to fill that vacuum with taxpayer money.
That's subsidies.
Yeah. Knowing the banks couldn't just sustain a multi-billion-dollar public utility out of the goodness of their hearts, the government introduced an annual subsidy to cover the operational costs of both UPI and RuPay debit card transactions.
And that worked.
For a short window, yeah. This held the ecosystem together.
Until the scale of the system completely outran the budget.
Exactly.
I mean, the math here is genuinely staggering. To understand why this subsidy model broke, we really have to contextualize the sheer volume we are talking about here.
It's massive.
It is. In the financial year 2026, UPI processed over 24,000 crore transactions.
Yeah.
The total value moved through the network was 314 lakh crore rupees. Just to visualize 24,000 crore transactions. If every single person on Earth, all 8 billion of us, did 30 transactions last year, it still wouldn't match India's annual UPI volume.
That is a crazy comparison, but it's true.
It was a 30% jump in transaction volume and a 21% jump in value just year over year. The hardware requirements for that kind of growth are astronomical.
And while the transaction volume and those corresponding server costs were just going exponential, the government subsidy was quietly collapsing.
Yeah, the numbers are wild.
The financial data really highlights a brutal reality here. At its peak in the financial year 2024, the government allocated about 3,631 crore rupees to subsidize the system.
Okay, 3,631 crore.
But by the very next year, FY25, that allocation dropped to 1,441 crore.
Wait, that is more than a 50% cut in a single year, while the volume of transactions was hitting record highs.
Yeah, and the trajectory only worsened. By FY26, the initial subsidy plummeted to a mere 435 crore.
Wow. From over 3,600 down to 435.
Yep. Now, the government did eventually pass a desperate mid-year revision to bump that number up because they realized it was nowhere near enough, but the damage was already visible.
Right.
A recent parliamentary committee investigation provided the most sobering statistic of all. They found that between 2022 and 2025, the government subsidy only covered 11% of what the payments industry actually spent to keep UPI functional.
Wait, 11%.
Just 11%.
That means the banks and the fintech companies were quietly eating 89% of the costs.
Yes.
They were bleeding capital to maintain a free public utility. They were basically subsidizing the nation's digital infrastructure out of their own balance sheets.
And no private entity can sustain an 89% operating deficit on a product that scales exponentially. The breaking point wasn't just like a possibility, it was a mathematical certainty.
So what does this all mean? It means the music finally stopped.
Yeah, the party is over.
Parliament recently passed an amendment to the Payment and Settlement Systems Act, and this piece of legislation is a fundamental shift in the landscape. It effectively ends the blanket zero MDR rule.
It's a huge deal.
The central government now has the power to notify specific payment modes, specific categories of payers, and specific transaction thresholds that can remain free while allowing the rest to be charged. The era of universal, unconditional free UPI is officially over.
And predictably, the public reaction to this legislative shift lacked nuance.
Oh, to say the least.
Yeah, panic just spread across social media, with consumers assuming every single microtransaction was about to be taxed.
Right. People were threatening to delete their payment apps entirely. You saw comments comparing the impending fees to those annoying platform convenience fees that suddenly appeared on food delivery and, like, mobile recharge apps.
Right.
The immediate fear was that buying a single samosa was going to come with a processing charge.
Which is why the distinction between a consumer and a merchant is so critical here. The government moved quickly to clarify that UPI will remain completely free for citizens.
Okay, phew.
Yeah. When you send money to a family member or when you scan a code at the local vegetable cart, your transaction isn't going to suddenly incur a fee.
So my samosa is safe.
Your samosa is perfectly safe. The new MDR targets the larger commercial flows within the ecosystem. The fee will likely only apply to a specific set of merchant transactions and almost certainly only above a certain monetary threshold.
Right, and the financial analytics firm Jefferies ran an estimate on what that actually looks like in practice.
Yeah, their numbers are really interesting.
They calculated that if the government implements a microscopic fee, just 0.15 to 0.3% strictly on merchant transactions over 2,000 rupees, the revenue generation would be massive.
Massive.
By the financial year 2028, that tiny fraction could generate anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 crore rupees for the payment apps, the banks, and the MPCI.
And that entirely solves the funding crisis without taxing the average consumer's daily life.
It seems like a no-brainer.
Well, the math solves the funding crisis, certainly, but it introduces a behavioral question.
How so?
If you impose a fee on a merchant for a transaction over 2,000 rupees, standard economic theory suggests that the merchant will try to avoid that fee.
Oh, I see.
They might take down their QR codes, ask customers to use traditional credit cards, or just demand cash for larger purchases.
Okay, I have to push back here because comparing India's retail landscape to standard economic theory is a little risky.
Fair point.
Indian merchants are notoriously price sensitive, and the unorganized retail sector here is just massive. If you slap a fee on a mid-sized electronics store or a busy local grocer, their first instinct is absolutely going to be hiding the QR code.
Yeah, they will tuck it away in a drawer.
Exactly. So how do we solve this? Like, has anyone actually tried introducing digital payment fees at a national scale without killing the adoption rate?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we actually have a perfect modern case study. We have to look at how the central bank in Brazil approached this exact problem.
Okay, Brazil.
Yeah. In November 2020, Brazil launched Pix. It's an instant digital payment system that operates almost identically to UPI in terms of speed and user experience. But Brazil's central bank made one fundamentally different strategic decision. Pix never pretended to be a completely free utility for businesses.
So from day one, the Brazilian rules were transparent. Peer-to-peer transfers, like, paying a friend back for dinner, those were totally free.
Yes.
But the moment a business received a Pix payment, the banks and payment providers were legally allowed to charge a small processing fee.
Right. And given the price sensitivity of merchants globally, you might expect that fee to create massive friction and stall the rollout of the system.
But the FinShot's data shows the exact opposite. Within 15 months of launching, Pix didn't just survive the inclusion of fees, it completely overtook debit and credit cards combined in total transaction volume.
It's incredible.
Fast forward to today, and Pix has 140 million users. That is roughly 8 out of every 10 adults in Brazil, using the system to conduct 4 billion transactions a month.
Wow.
and all while merchants are actively paying a fee.
Wait.
It proves that a real-time payment system can scale to absolute national dominance, even with MDR attached.
And the reason it worked is because of what Pix was competing against.
What do you mean?
Well, Pix wasn't competing against the illusion of free. It was competing against the entrenched reality of traditional credit card networks. In Brazil, standard credit card fees for merchants were hovering between 2 and 3%.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes significantly higher for smaller businesses. So when the central bank rolled out Pix, even with a small fee attached, it represented a massive operational discount compared to what merchants were already accustomed to paying Visa or MasterCard.
So it felt like a win for them.
Exactly. Combine that drastic discount with instant settlement, meaning the merchant received the funds in milliseconds rather than waiting days for a batch process to clear, and it became a highly attractive proposition.
That makes total sense.
Furthermore, the central bank mandated that every major financial institution had to participate in the network, ensuring universal access. The merchants adopted it enthusiastically because it improved their cash flow and lowered their overhead.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We look at Brazil as this perfect, cleanly executed blueprint, right?
Yeah.
But India has a unique psychological hurdle that Brazil never had to deal with. And this is a piece of history that gets completely glossed over in the current debate. India isn't trying to copy Brazil. India actually already ran this exact experiment.
Yes. The prevailing narrative is that UPI has always been a free public utility, but the historical data contradicts that.
Right. Between its initial launch in 2016 and the government's zero MDR mandate in 2020, UPI was not free for businesses.
Not at all.
For those first 4 years, merchants were paying an MDR of somewhere between 0.25 and 0.3%.
And despite those early fees, UPI thrived. It scaled rapidly across the early adopter segment and successfully overtook both debit and credit card transactions in volume and value by late 2019. The system was functioning perfectly well under a fee-based model. Merchants didn't abandon the network for cash because, exactly like the later scenario in Brazil, the 0.3% UPI fee was viewed as entirely fair and significantly cheaper than the 2% they were paying on traditional card swipes.
We literally had the Brazilian model working perfectly before Brazil even launched Pix.
We did.
So why is the industry so terrified of reintroducing a 0.3% fee now?
Because of the psychological damage caused by the 2020 intervention. By stepping in and legally mandating a zero MDR environment, the government artificially altered the market psychology.
Right.
Brazil built its system meticulously so that nobody had to unlearn anything. A Brazilian business owner simply shifted their budget from a large credit card fee to a small Pix fee.
Very logical.
But India, on the other hand, spent the last 6 consecutive years aggressively training an entire nation of merchants to expect zero operating costs.
And you, listening to this, you know exactly how consumer psychology works. When a convenience is offered for free for over half a decade, it fundamentally shifts in our minds.
Oh, absolutely.
It stops feeling like a subsidized perk and starts feeling like a fundamental human right. Reversing a 6-year, deeply ingrained expectation of free without breaking the universal trust that made the system ubiquitous, that is incredibly dangerous territory.
The challenge of scaling UPI moving forward has nothing to do with the economics. We know the unit economics work. Brazil proved it, and India's own pre-2020 data proved it.
Right. The math is solid.
The challenge is entirely a matter of behavioral untraining.
It is a massive communication problem. So, to wrap this up, the survival of UPI at this 24,000 core scale isn't about tweaking the complex math of the merchant discount rate.
No, it's not yet.
It is about whether the government and the payments industry can successfully rewrite the narrative. They have to shift the public perception from, we are betraying you by adding corporate fees to we are implementing a microscopic fair toll to sustain a digital infrastructure that the entire nation's economy now depends on.
This raises an important question for all of us to consider, really looking far beyond just our payment apps. If a government can build a massive, country-defining digital infrastructure on the back of a free forever promise, only to be forced to walk it back when the hidden hardware bill finally comes due, what else in our modern lives is operating on borrowed time?
Oh, that is a scary thought.
Right. Think about the sprawling government citizen portals, the supposedly unlimited cloud storage we rely on, or even the venture capital subsidized quick commerce deliveries we mentioned earlier.
Like getting groceries in 10 minutes for almost nothing.
Exactly. How many of the frictionless digital conveniences we structure our daily lives around are just waiting for their hidden subsidy to run out? And when that comfortable illusion of free eventually disappears, how much friction are we actually willing to tolerate before we demand a return to the old ways?
Will we pay the digital toll to keep the servers running? Or will we find ourselves, metaphorically, back on the street in Thailand, fumbling with exact change and struggling to communicate?
Yeah, that's the real question.
It's going to be a fascinating behavioral experiment to watch unfold. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the economics behind the systems around you, and we will catch you next time.